Welcome to How to Be a Human Leader Without Losing Your Job. We're here to chat about human leadership in a way that's real and relatable, tackling work-life challenges and offering practical advice to navigate tough decisions. Whether you're leading a team or navigating your own career, we got you covered. I'm Roberto Torres, a startup engineering leader, and with me is Chris Ollerton, a Fortune 100 IT leader. We'll dive into the real world stuff, share experiences, and offer guidance on leading with compassion while keeping your career on track. Today, we will discuss how a human leader fosters their team members to carry on a culture of creativity. Hi, Chris. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Roberto. Summer has started. How are you doing with the start of summer?
Well, Mexico City is more rain about more raining than the heat of the summer. But I'm managing.
Good,
And you?
good.
Okay, okay. Um, so this time, I think it's important for any human leader whenever they are in a company that has a good sense of culture to foster their teams in sense of creativity. And I mean, we know that problems are not the same all the time. That there is not a book or a Bible that says, hey, here is this problem, you have to act this way. And whenever it happens, you will act upon that. Problems are different because we have different projects, we have different scenarios, we have a different team, we are in different times within the year, so we must act differently. Um, what do you think of this?
Yes, well, I think, part of creativity and getting your team to think like that is to try not to solve their problems when they come to you with them, basically, right? So creativity, they're trying to solve some problem in whatever field they're in, accounting, IT, engineering, marketing. And instead of saying, well, I would do this, well, now you've stopped creativity, right? Because you've just offered them a solution that they didn't come up with. Instead, you could ask them, well, what have you tried so far? Why didn't it work? Or you can ask them, well, are there any solutions that you've seen in a different industry around that? So instead of being a humane leader trying to take the burdens and pains away from your employees on the team, maybe instead ask them about, well, what's worked, what's failed, what was good, what was a little bit good about what you tried already. And that way, while you may have some experience with the problem that they're trying to solve right now, and your first instinct is to jump in and offer a solution, in terms of long-term employee development and creating that culture of creativity, it actually starts to shut down creativity. Instead, the only creativity that'll exist will be yours, because all the team members will come to you, and say, hey, Roberto, I got a problem. What's the solution? What should I go try? Now the employee's not doing any creative thinking. So we may, as humane leaders, we may have gotten promoted because we were really creative. To encourage it is a reverse. Our creative personality, we need to put a cap on that, and we need to try and ask questions to the employee. Maybe it's a little leading, kind of like a lawyer, where you're leading them, where you're trying to lead the testimony. But if you ask enough questions, then the employee will start to become creative, right? They're going to start offering things. And don't be too quick to shut any of those ideas down, as long as they're not too expensive, right? If it's a single conversation, you can brainstorm with them a little bit, but try and ask more questions than offer solutions. You don't want to be immediately offering solutions.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. You know, that the thing about a problem arising and team members going to their leader to ask, hey, what shall we do? Is something that happens a lot in the Latam culture. Is my boss, my leader knows everything, so I'm going to listen to obey what's going on. And besides that culture, I think that that is not the wisest solution because being a manager doesn't mean that you know everything, that you know more about the the problem, the context, everything related to the problem. It's fostering a your team members to think. We know we talked about this before recording, and this is a phrase that we used a lot in the back in the 90s and the beginning of the century, thinking out of the box. You know, whenever we have a situation, what we could do is uh, thinking outside of the usual thing that we have. But team members might not do it if you don't, it's not allowing, if you don't tell them to do it, if you don't empower that team members in order for them to grow, to think differently, to do something. Because if they're sitting in their desk, in their workplace, hey, I'm waiting for my boss, for my leader to give me the solution, this is not going to work.
Yeah, yeah. You don't get a highly productive team if the leader is the bottleneck to everything. And there needs to be some guidelines, and every company's culture around these guidelines would be somewhat different, but there might be a certain number of hours that the employee should put into it before leadership needs to decide if it's a workable solution, or a certain number of dollars can be spent to look into creative solutions before a decision has to be made by more senior leadership. But the bottom line is it's a humane leader to foster this culture of creativity is to give the team enough room and time to be creative. There may be times when it's really urgent and a decision has to be made rapidly, and maybe you do have the most experience as the leader, so the decision's made. That's not a good opportunity for encouraging creativity because of the urgency, right? So the humane leader needs to make some judgment calls when there's an appropriate amount of time that's available to the employee on the project or the issue that is needs the creativity. The humane leader needs to recognize that as a coaching opportunity for creativity. So in those instances, when you're coaching for creativity, your mindset as the humane leader needs to be around, I'm trying to coach them on broadening their thinking. Ask them questions like, well, are there other industries different than ours that have this same problem? What do they do? You may know already, but don't answer that, right? Is have them to think, get them to try and start thinking like that, because creativity, frequently, the most creative people are the people that have the broadest backgrounds lots of times. In other words, you may have team members who are very narrowly focused on just one topic, and they know it better than anybody else. But lots of times your most creative employees are the ones that know a lot of things about a lot of different fields, maybe a lot of different industries, and they have a lot of different life experiences. And so for them to bring that to the table and bring that to the company, you have to give them enough time and the encouragement, right, to bring that the creative idea to the table. And don't shame them when the creative idea maybe doesn't work, because not every creative idea is a brilliant, wonderful thing that's going to work perfectly. Sometimes a creative idea is a piece of garbage, but don't shut it down too quick, right? Let them discover on their own, as long as, again, it's within those constraints of the number of hours or cost, but let them learn on their own, no, that idea is not going to work, and let them toss the idea away and come up with another creative solution. Again, within the boundaries that's appropriate for the company.
Yeah, understood. I totally agree. Timing is essential.
Yes.
If there's something that happened that requires something fast, you won't say, hey, let's work on this. You have the solution, you apply it. If there is something that to be done in a month or 2 months that doesn't impact business nor your squad nor your team, apply it. While you were talking about this, I remember a phrase that says, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is a famous expression often referred to as the definition of insanity. You cannot expect to have the better results if you do the things over and over again the same. You have to think differently. You have to do something that might be um, crazy sometimes.
Unconventional.
Yeah,
Unconventional. It might be unconventional.
yeah, unconventional.
In some companies, you could do crazy stuff, but in most companies, it'd be safer to say unconventional.
Well, at Honeywell, you couldn't, tell me if I'm wrong, you couldn't be unconventional. You had to follow strict processes and rules, and the decision weren't made by you, not you as a human leader, neither by your team members. Maybe your manager or the VP, or you had to scale it, and it would take a long time to accomplish. Is that correct, my
That
listener?
is correct. They actually, Honeywell is now broken apart. And part of, I think, the reason is that they bought a lot of creative companies with a lot of creative people, but then they put all that structure and requirements and rules, and slowly creativity gets less and less and less. And the things that made those companies that they acquired so profitable and so valuable was the creativity, and they killed it. So you can kill productivity and creativity completely if you are not really observing what's happening in your company's culture. And so that culture of creativity is something you actively have to work on consciously. The humane leader needs to be aware that this is a key part that makes our company valuable. And so, how do I encourage that creative thinking? Well, it's allowing the employees enough time to try experimenting and letting some of the experiments fail. That's where you have to, and again, you have to set good boundaries around that, because you can't have a financial disaster where the creative solution is a huge financial burden, right? Because that could ruin the company. But within reason, you need to have these kinds of creative boundaries.
Yes, I agree. When you were talking about Honeywell, I was thinking about a big elephant, running at their pace, but it was kind of slow. It was so big. And I was thinking that whenever Honeywell of the elephant wanted to take a deviation, go left or right, well, it couldn't stop immediately. It had to go several hundred yards or meters to stop, and then it will turn. It will be so slow. That is the thing about a huge company such as Honeywell. At a startup, rather than being an elephant, it would be a dolphin swimming so fast. And the moment you require a change, it will be fast because the dolphin will stop and then will turn right or left. All it will be so smoothly to do it because we don't have at a startup so many processes, rules. There is no chain of command, a bunch of decisions in the chain of command. It will have to be done quickly because we require to be that agile and we require to be that I don't mean smart in the sense that the big companies doesn't do it, but wise and smart decisions that to be done fast and hastily. That is something that I started to do. But regardless of the size of the company that you are in, you could foster your team to, as we have spoke, um, to be different, to think unconventional, to fail only if your culture of you as a team, as a human leader, allows it. Because if you punish failing, people are not going to be experimenting anything at all. Because they will be expecting a stream, a punishment, something that it isn't. So I think that the version zero of all this is for you to let your team fail. Fail often fails, man. That's my philosophy. And if you do that, people will try. They might fail, but they will learn from this. And if it works, they will feel encouraged. They will feel good about what they did. And the rest of the team will say, hey, this dude, this girl, this did something amazing. And my leader cheered. And we had this impact. It could be small, it could be a big one, but it fostered a culture within ourselves that it will make the team better.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And your point around punishment was absolutely correct because in general, my experience was the experiments had to be very small, very low risk, and they had to succeed 99.999% of the time. That was the actual practical culture. And so that's not a creative culture. If you expect that level of success, then you don't take much risk. Therefore, you don't get much creative change because the incremental change is so little each time. If you're really going to get some breakthrough creativity, some breakthrough innovation, you have to be able to risk more and not get punished for it. And unfortunately, sometimes what the leadership says versus what the leadership does is two different things. So as the humane leader, make sure that your words and actions are in alignment in creativity. Because to your point, if you punish them, creativity will end, and actually they will only come to you for the creative solutions because they don't want to get punished if their idea doesn't work.
Yes. And if you fail as a leader, the punishment will be to you, not. So,
Exactly.
yes. And I think there is a big aversion towards the word risk. Many people doesn't want to take risk. Why? Maybe there is this punishment culture. Maybe it is because they don't feel that they could handle the problems that risk might bring. I think that risk is something that has to be done, but has to be planned, you know, to mitigate, but it has to be understood that there could be a risk of what you're doing. Try and to understand the boundaries, not to spend too much money, not to waste resources that were done before. We worked high. It has to be managed by the humility in this case.
Without a
And
doubt.
yeah, and I think that one of the most important things about how to create or foster a cultural creativity within the team, it is communication. If people do things out of their hearts, and when they do it, you don't tell them, "Hey, why you did this? You spend a lot of money. You used 40% of your time when you shouldn't. You acquire a tool that was forbidden, and you did." Well, that is a problem of communication from you to your team members. So communication, it is essential to define scope, boundaries, and what they could do, because you had to uh, communicate with them and understand all together what to do. I think it was like 8 years ago. I gave a consultation to a startup company, and they told me that they had several problems with our operations until they did something that helped them, and they were cheering. When I looked deep, I found out that they rose their database package to the highest one. So they were burning like 10% monthly in database fees of what they have of their road rate. So before switching and saying, I'm going to rise to the highest level of the database, talk to your manager. Is this feasible? Am I going to burn this? You have to see how much are you going to spend instead of clicking and saying, I'm the hero over here.
Yep, without a doubt. Yep.
Okay, great. I think with this, Chris, we end this episode, and I will tell the audience that is listening to us, don't be afraid to have a cultural creativity, have boundaries, scope, and people should do it good.
It will bring greater job satisfaction, I'm sure. Good discussion. See you
Indeed.
next week.